Every Dragon Ball fan knows how this moment is supposed to go. Two warriors, backed into the final corner of existence, snap on a pair of magic earrings and become one unstoppable being. He wins. But the moment he steps inside the monster and lowers his guard, the fusion shatters, leaving two desperate men in the dark. That is the story you remember. But what if it didn't end? What if the earrings never let go? What if the strongest warrior ever born was also a prison for two souls who could never be free again? A single man standing where a father and a husband used to be times two. This is the story of a victory that never released its heroes. Two families, one man, a fusion that could not, end. This is what happens when Vegito stays fused. The earth trembled, as if creation itself were coming apart. Above the shattered rocky wastelands, Super Buu, swollen with the absorbed power of Gohan, tore holes in the sky with nothing but the pressure of his aura. Goku and Vegeta stood at the edge of a cliff that no longer had a bottom, their chests heaving, their bodies bruised past the point where pride could hide it. They were out of miracles. They were out of time.
Vegeta, come on! You gotta listen to me! The Elder Kai gave me these. This isn't like the fusion dance the boys use. But if we put these on, we're stuck together. We won't ever be able to split back up.
Vegeta recoiled as though the earring were a live coal. Everything in him, the pride of a Saiyan prince, the years of rivalry, the vow to one day stand above Kakarot on his own, revolted against the idea of being welded to this man for eternity. His fists shook at his sides, and when he spoke, his voice was pure venom.
Permanent. You expect me to spend the rest of my existence trapped inside one body with you? I would rather die on my feet than live 1 second as half of some clown.
But Goku did not argue with pride. He argued with the truth, and the truth was a battlefield full of the people they loved, moments from erasure. He looked at Vegeta, not as a rival, but as the only man left who could help him save everyone, and his voice was quiet, urgent, and impossible to refuse.
Vegeta, they're all gonna die. Gohan's already gone. Goten, Trunks, Bulma, everyone. If we don't do this, there's nobody left to be proud in front of. Please, just this once.
The word please broke something in Vegeta, or maybe it simply finished breaking what the fight had already cracked. He snatched the earring from Goku's palm and clamped it onto his ear like a man biting down on poison. His jaw clenched so hard it looked painful.
If you ever tell anyone I agreed to this, Kakarot, I will find a way to make you regret it. Now let's get this over with.
The two Saiyans were wrenched toward each other by a force neither could resist, swallowed in a column of blinding white light that split the darkened sky. The scream of power drowned out even Buu's howling, and when the light collapsed inward and faded, two men were gone. In their place stood one. He wore the blue and orange of a fighter, the smirk of a prince, and the easy stance of a man who fought for joy. He rolled his shoulders, cracked his neck slowly, and felt the impossible, seamless strength of a body built from two of the greatest warriors alive.
Now this feels incredible. Hey Buu! Bad news for you, ugly. There's only one of me now, and one of me is way more than enough.
He looked down for a moment at the small green earring on his lobe, feeling something faint pass through it, a gentle warmth, a barely there hum, like a struck tuning fork settling. He touched it with one finger, waited, and felt nothing more. He shrugged it off entirely and turned his full attention to the monster in front of him, grinning wider.
Huh, weird. Anyway, where were we? Oh right, I was about to ruin your whole day.
What followed was less a battle and more a lesson in humiliation. Vegito moved through Super Buu's attacks like a man swatting away smoke, blocking devastating blows with a single lazy hand while yawning at the effort. He let Buu hit him just to gauge the strength behind it, tilting his head with mild curiosity as the impact barely moved him.
That the best you got, chubby? Come on, overgrown toddler, throw me another one. I'm still getting used to this body, and I'd hate to get bored on my first day.
When Buu shrieked in fury and flared his aura to catastrophic levels, cratering the ground for miles, Vegito answered by casually ascending to Super Saiyan, his hair snapping golden and his eyes flashing teal, as effortless as flipping a light switch. The earrings hummed a little louder at the surge of power. He did not notice. He simply raised an eyebrow at the raging pink demon and cracked his knuckles.
Oh good, you're trying. I love it when they try. It makes it so much more satisfying when they figure out it doesn't matter.
In a last, desperate gambit, Buu unleashed his strangest weapon, transforming Vegito into a small, round, harmless piece of coffee candy. It should have been the end. Instead, the tiny candy shot to life, bouncing off Boo's face and body at blinding speed, drilling into him again and again, dodging every furious swing while a muffled, delighted voice echoed from the sugary projectile.
Ha! You made me candy? This is the best thing that's ever happened to me! I'm gonna beat you as a jawbreaker, Boo, and you're gonna have to live with that forever!
Beaten senseless by his own transformation, Boo had no choice but to change Vegito back. The fused warrior reappeared mid-laugh, unbothered, the joy of the fight radiating off him like heat. Absurd stakes met with absurd confidence, a hero having the time of his life. And beneath the earrings, only warmth, only a hum. Then Vegito made a choice that came straight from Goku's heart, wrapped in Vegeta's calculation. He raised a barrier of ki and deliberately allowed Boo to absorb him, letting the monster's flesh swallow him whole. It was not a sacrifice, it was a rescue mission. He would slip inside, tear his sons and friends free, and walk them all out.
All right, big guy, dinner time. Enjoy me while you can, because I'm about to give you the worst indigestion of your life.
Inside Boo, the world was a nightmare of pulsing pink walls and living, breathing corridors of flesh. And here, in the belly of the beast, is where the story you know quietly dies. In your memory, this is the moment the magic gives out. This is where the strange atmosphere of Boo's body presses on the fusion and pulls it apart, a miraculous accident that lets Goku and Vegeta stumble back into being two people. Vegito dropped his barrier, ready to begin the hunt, and the miracle never came. The fusion held. There was no sudden tug toward separation, no weakening, no divide. The strange atmosphere pressed, and the bond simply did not care. The earrings hummed, a little louder now inside the monster, a little warmer, but they did not break. They did nothing at all. Vegito stood in the pink gloom, entirely unaware that he had just missed his only exit.
Now, where is everybody?
There was no hesitation, only Vegeta's ruthless efficiency taking over. The mission was simple: find their family and get out. His expression hardened, the playfulness draining into cold focus as he blasted through Boo's inner walls, hunting. He found them, the cocoons, the pods where Gohan, Gotenks, and Piccolo hung suspended and unconscious. One by one he tore them loose and cradled them, then punched his way back out into open air. The rescue worked exactly as planned, and when his boots hit the rocky ground, he was still just one man. The instant the absorbed fighters were pulled free, Super Boo convulsed and began to shrink, his bloated form collapsing in on itself. When the shuddering stopped, something far worse stood in the crater. Something small, wiry, childlike, and radiating pure chaos. Kid Boo had emerged, the original and most dangerous form of the demon, a creature that did not fight like a person, but like a natural disaster given a grin. It threw back its head and screamed at the fractured sky. But this was not the desperate, ragged, near-death struggle history remembered. There was no taking turns, no stalling for a spirit bomb, no Vegeta buying seconds with his body while Goku begged the universe for energy. There was only Vegito, the combined might of the two strongest Saiyans, permanent and without a time limit. He did not need to survive Kid Boo, he needed only to erase him completely, because a creature that regenerated from a single cell could not simply be worn down.
You don't stop, do you? No brain, no fear, just noise. Fine, then I won't leave enough of you to make noise with.
Kid Boo was still terrifying, screaming and laughing and reforming from vapor, hurling attacks that could gut a planet. But Vegito hit harder than the disaster could rebuild. He drove the creature back across the ruined landscape, then planted his feet and drew his hands to his side, gathering a torrent of energy that fused Vegeta's final flash into the shape of Goku's Kamehameha.
This one's got both their names on it. Boo, say goodnight. Final Kamehameha!
A river of blue-white annihilation swallowed Kid Boo whole, vaporizing him down to the last living cell, leaving nothing behind to crawl back from. The threat that had haunted the universe was simply gone, and in that final, maximum push, the earrings did more than hum. Both of them pulsed with heat at once, a synchronized flash of warmth that made Vegito flinch and grab his ear. He winced, breathing hard in the sudden silence, feeling the strange spike fade back down to nothing. He filed it away and let his hand drop.
Okay, that one actually stung a little.
The dust settled. Boo was dead. The absorbed fighters would be freed and healed. Good Boo would one day live in peace. And the crisis, for all its horror, was over. Everyone was safe. And on the silent, broken green hills of the sacred world of the Kais, Vegito stood alone, staring down at his own hands, turning them over slowly. He had been fused for an hour now, maybe 2. The fight was finished, the danger was gone, and he was still one person. A moment later, Vegito raised 2 fingers to his forehead. With a soft pop, he was gone. He lifted his eyes to the Elder Kai, and the ancient god met his gaze without flinching. There it was, the silence where the separation was supposed to be, stretching out between them like a held breath that would never release. The Elder Kai's voice, when it finally came, was quiet and without any triumph, only a terrible certainty.
I told you. I was not exaggerating, and I was not being dramatic. The Potara fusion is permanent. It is done, and it cannot be undone.
Something moved across Vegito's face in layers. First came Goku's response, a flash of genuine distress that settled almost at once into acceptance. The instinct of a man who faces what is real and asks only what comes next. Then, underneath it, came Vegeta's, a flicker of cold and private rage, at the Elder Kai, at himself for agreeing, at Kakarot for the word please, at a universe petty enough to make this forever. It surfaced and vanished in an instant, buried the way Vegeta had always buried everything. What remained was a man taking a slow breath and rolling his shoulders, the same gesture from his first moment of life, but no longer excitement. Now it was the motion of a man settling a weight he would carry for the rest of his days.
All right, then we live with it. Both of us. Whatever this is now, we live with it.
Back on Earth, grief did not have the luxury of stillness, not with Bulma in the room. Her husband was trapped inside another body with another man, and she was not built to sit and mourn. She was built to fix things. She contacted Dende, arranged passage to New Namek, and gathered the Namekian Dragon Balls, summoning Porunga, the mightiest wish-granting dragon a mortal could reach. Vegito stood before the towering green serpent as its eyes blazed, and Bulma's voice rang out sharp and clear across the alien ground.
Porunga, I wish for you to separate the Potara fusion. Undo it. Split them back into Goku and Vegeta. Give me my husband back.
The great dragon's eyes flared, straining, its enormous form tensing against the command. And then the light guttered. Porunga could not do it. This was not a wish denied by rule or a power politely out of reach. The fusion was not a spell to be dispelled or a condition to be reversed. It had become part of the structure of reality itself, and asking Porunga to undo it was like asking him to switch off gravity. The dragon could grant wishes within the bounds of what was real. This was now simply what was real. The hope did not fade. It died, in front of the whole family, all at once. Bulma's face, in that instant, was the face of the smartest mortal alive watching certainty betray her. She had arranged this. She had believed it, and it had failed. She did not cry, not there, not in front of everyone, but something behind her eyes hardened into a colder, more permanent resolve. The moment she stopped being a woman who would fix this, and became a woman who would find a way, no matter how long it took. Beside her, Chi-Chi did not rage. Chi-Chi went still, the stillness of someone who already knew, and then she walked to Vegito and looked up at the face that was her husband's and was not, and spoke 4 small, devastating words.
Just come home. Please, come home.
The children felt it differently, the way children always do. Gohan, the scholar, asked the practical question no one else could voice, his brow furrowed with the effort of understanding a loss that wore his father's face.
So what do we do now? How are we supposed to live with this? What does this even make him to us?
But it was Goten who drove the knife home without meaning to, tugging at a sleeve and looking up with wide, uncomprehending eyes, asking the only question a small boy could think to ask, the one that had no answer at all.
When's Dad coming back? He is coming back, right? Somebody tell me when Dad's coming back.
No one answered him, because no one could. Kid Trunks, sharper than his years, read the frozen faces of every adult in the room and went silent in a way that was deeply wrong for a child his age. Dende, the young guardian, shivered visibly, sensing that the fusion was complete in a way that violated something fundamental. And Piccolo, as always, was the one who said aloud the thing everyone was circling, his voice flat and merciless and honest.
Say it plainly, because pretending won't help the kids. Goku and Vegeta are gone. This man is what's left. The sooner everyone accepts that, the sooner we start dealing with reality.
And so the impossible question became a practical one. Where does a man live when he is partly 2 husbands and partly 2 fathers, when moving into one home means abandoning the other? He could not go to the mountain house without deserting Bulma and Trunks. He could not move into Capsule Corporation without deserting Chi-Chi and Goten. There was no home that could hold him, so Bulma, the builder, the problem solver, did the only thing she knew how to do. She built one. She purchased a plot of land that sat in the wild country between Chi-Chi's mountain and West City, close enough to both that he could be present in either life, far enough from each that it belonged to neither. There she raised a new house from nothing, a home that was not Goku's and not Vegeta's, but Vegito's alone. They came to call it the Border House, and it would become the beating heart of everything that followed, a home built between two homes, for a man who belonged to everyone and could be fully no one's. The strangest relationship the Border House forged was the one canon never required. Chi-Chi and Bulma, two women who had never needed to share anything, now shared one man by cosmic accident. Neither was the other woman. Neither had betrayed anyone. Both had lost their husbands on the same day to the same impossible event, and what came back belonged partly to each of them and wholly to neither. They did not hate each other. That would have been simpler. Instead, they grieved in opposite directions, and the friction lived in the gap between. Chi-Chi loved the only way she knew how, through food and presents and the quiet labor of a home. She arrived at the Border House with armloads of groceries and simply began to cook, doubling every recipe without a word, when she realized a fused Saiyan ate like two Saiyans. She did not talk about her feelings. She fed people, and in the steam of a full kitchen, she found something that was not a marriage and was not widowhood, something in between that had no name.
Sit down and eat before it gets cold. I made enough for both of you, for all of however many of you there are in there now. Just eat.
Bulma loved by refusing to accept the unacceptable. While Chi-Chi cooked, Bulma arrived with blueprints and scanners and diagnostic equipment, measuring the earrings, reading Vegito's key signature, treating the fusion like an engineering problem because it was the only frame that did not shatter her. Sometimes Chi-Chi wanted her to stop poking at it and just let them live. Sometimes Bulma wanted Chi-Chi to stop pretending everything was fine and admit it was a nightmare. They rarely fought, but when they did, it cut deep, because the grief underneath sharpened every edge.
I'm not giving up just because a dragon couldn't do it. There's a seam in here somewhere, a mechanism, something. Everything in the universe follows rules, and rules can be broken. I just have to find the crack.
And Vegito sat between them, in the impossible middle. He carried Goku's love for Chi-Chi and Vegeta's love for Bulma, both intact, both real, both aching, and he could not be the husband either of them had married, and could not be in two places at once. He sat at a dinner table with two women who were both his wives and neither his wife, ate enough for two men, and tried to be enough for a situation that had no enough. Some nights the Goku warmth won, and he thanked Chi-Chi and asked Bulma about her day and tried to make it feel normal. Some nights the Vegeta silence won, and he ate without a word and left the table early, because the whole thing was unbearable, and he could not say why. The boys found each other in the wreckage of it. Goten and Kid Trunks began spending their days at the Border House, not because anyone arranged it, but because their father was there, and the other boy was the only person alive who understood what it meant to have a father who was also someone else's father. They could not have put it into words. They were children. But the friendship deepened into something closer to brotherhood. Two boys growing up beneath the same fused man, in the same strange house, carrying the same strange loss they did not have the language for. Late that first night, when the others had gone to their real homes and the house had emptied around him, Vegito sat alone on the porch beneath a wide black sky. Inside him, something moved that he had no name for yet. Not a voice, not a thought. A pull, like two hands gripping the same wheel and turning it toward different roads. One wanted to stand up and walk inside. The other wanted to walk into the dark and hit something until the noise in his skull went quiet. He could feel both impulses as clearly as his own heartbeat, and neither would yield. And for the first time he understood that this was not a problem to solve but a condition to live in. He did not move. He sat in the chair on the porch and let the two pulls cancel each other into stillness. And the stillness was the loneliest thing he had ever felt, because it proved there was no one driving, no single hand on the wheel. For the first time, without an enemy in front of him or a family watching, he felt what two souls in one body actually cost. Not a splitting pain, not a dramatic war, but a constant, quiet negotiation between two complete people forced to share every moment, every choice, every feeling, forever. He raised a hand and touched the earring. It was warm. It was always a little warm now. He let his hand fall and looked back up at the stars. and he spoke one line to no one at all, in Goku's easy cadence carrying Vegeta's full weight.
Well, this is going to be a long life.
The emotional weight of the evening meals was one thing, but the sheer physical logistics of keeping Vegito fueled became its own absurd reality. One quiet afternoon, with the house mostly empty, Chi-Chi stood by the counter and simply stared. She watched him absently devour what would have been a week's worth of groceries in a matter of minutes, a caloric black hole wearing her husband's face. Not long after, an industrial-grade refrigerator arrived at the house, quietly ordered by Bulma, humming in the corner like a monument to the fact that two men had become one impossible appetite. It was a joke, and it ached, both at once. He trained, because training was the one thing both souls agreed on, without any negotiation at all. For an hour at a time, everything became beautifully simple, punch and dodge and blast and repeat. No families to balance, no impossible middle to stand in. The earrings hummed while he worked, and hummed louder when he flared to Super Saiyan, and each time he paused, touched his ear, felt the warmth, and set it aside again.
Just you and me out here. No dinner tables, no two of everything, no questions I can't answer. Just this. I could do this forever.
Bulma cornered him one afternoon with a scanner she had built by hand, running it over his ki, his cells, the pulsing output of the earrings themselves, and she found nothing she could use. The fusion was seamless. There was no boundary between the Goku and the Vegeta, no crack to widen, no mechanism to reverse, because it was not two things glued together, but one thing that had once been two. Alone in her lab that night, she stared at readings that showed her a wall with no door in it, and her face did something complicated and private that she let no one see. Chi-Chi's love became a ritual. Every Tuesday and every Friday, she drove up the mountain road with bags of food and stocked the border house kitchen, and often she and Vegito did not even talk. She cooked, he ate, and they simply existed in the same warm room. One such afternoon, Vegito watched Goten and Kid Trunks spar clumsily in the yard, and both his souls stirred at once, Goku wanting to leap in and roughhouse, Vegeta itching to correct their sloppy stances. For a while he did neither. Then he rose, walked down, and did both at once.
Goten, tighten that fist. You're gonna break your thumb throwing it like that. There. See? Now it's a punch.
The boy's stance snapped into place, and Vegito grinned and dropped a hand onto his head.
Yeah, not bad, kid. Keep it up.
The boys lit up like the sun had come out, and for one perfect moment the man's divided nature worked in his favor, Vegeta's precision and Goku's warmth landing on a child at the same instant. It was a glimpse of what this man could be if the situation had been even a little kinder. Piccolo watched it happen from the tree line, and later, when the boys had gone, he stood beside Vegito and delivered the most caring thing he was capable of, dressed as cold instruction.
Those boys need structure. They're going to grow up confused about who their father even is. Figure out what you're going to be to them, and figure it out soon. I'm not telling you how. I'm telling you it matters.
Then he turned and left, and Vegito respected him for it more than any comfort. A few months deeper into the new life, alone in the yard, Vegito pushed. He rose to Super Saiyan and trained hard for an hour, the earrings humming their constant song, and then he reached for more. A single burst of ki, bigger than he had tested before, probing the ceiling of his own strength. And the earrings did not just hum, they flashed. A brief, brilliant pulse of light burst from both at once, and a spike of heat lanced through his skull, sharp enough to make him grab his ear and grunt. It passed in a heartbeat. He stood in the quiet, breathing, and pressed his fingers to the earring, finding it whole, unbroken, normal to the touch. But something had happened. He had felt it.
That was new. That was more than a hum.
He said nothing to anyone. He went inside and ate his dinner, and acted as though the yard had been ordinary, because Goku's instinct whispered, "It's probably nothing," and Vegeta's pride insisted, "I don't show weakness," and between the two of them, the truth stayed buried. The permanence, it turned out, was not his alone. On the world of the Kais, Shin and Kibito remained fused into the single being Kibito Kai, and in time they too traveled to New Namek and summoned Porunga to separate them. And Porunga failed again, exactly as it had for Vegito. The rule was universal. This was not something particular to Goku and Vegeta, not a fluke of the sacred world or the specific earrings or the circumstances. Potara fusion was permanent for everyone, mortal and Kai alike, and not even the gods could undo it. There was a quiet exchange afterward between Vegito and Kibito Kai, the only two beings in all of existence who knew what this actually was. Two people, each carrying two people, permanently, forever. They did not say much. They did not need to. They simply acknowledged one another across a gulf that only the two of them could see, and the Elder Kai, watching it confirmed, watching even the Namekian Dragon Balls fail to touch what he had described, went silent and disturbed, an old god realizing the law he had named was more binding than even he had understood.
So, we are only 3. It is a small club, warrior, but at least it is not empty.
Time flowed on, and months became a year, and then more than a year, and the border house stopped being a building and became a home. The rhythms of the strange new life settled into patterns everyone recognized as permanent, not because they had accepted them, but because people, and Saiyans, adapt to anything given enough time, even the unbearable. Vegito found a version of functional. He trained, he ate, he moved between 2 families, he was present. He was not happy the way Goku had been happy, or satisfied the way Vegeta had been satisfied, but he was there, and slowly, without meaning to, he was becoming someone new. Not a blend of 2 men, a person in his own right. That was both the victory and the tragedy. Bulma never stopped. A wing of her lab at Capsule Corporation was now dedicated entirely to the fusion problem, and she scanned and theorized and built devices that failed, and read ancient texts and contacted scientists across the stars, and none of it worked. The smartest mortal alive was losing to a law of physics she could not even properly measure, and she refused to surrender to it. It had become her way of loving Vegeta, this stubborn, endless refusal to accept that he was gone. Chi-Chi, meanwhile, found a different kind of peace, not acceptance in the intellectual sense, but a practical settling, cooking and checking on Goten, and having awkward, increasingly real conversations with Bulma about logistics and money and the strange shared life. She still cried sometimes, alone, at home, where no one could see, but less often than she used to. The children carried it in their own ways. Goten adjusted the way small boys do, calling Vegito dad without interrogating it, loving a father who was simply there, and finding that enough for now. Kid Trunks adjusted less cleanly, sharper and more perceptive, sensing the wrongness his friend could not, deflecting with jokes that were really shields.
My dad is also your dad. That's weird, right? Like, objectively, that's a weird thing.
But the humor never quite reached his eyes, and he watched the adults' faces more closely than a child should have to. And the earring hum was constant now, a low, ambient warmth Vegito had stopped noticing because it never went away. It had become part of him, indistinguishable from his own pulse. But the danger had not faded. Every time he powered up, even a little, the warmth pulsed, a clock ticking quietly beneath his skin, counting down toward a disaster that had not yet come. He no longer heard it. It was simply always there. Vegito was alone in the border house kitchen. Both families had gone home, Chi-Chi to her mountain and Bulma to her city, and the boys were with their mothers. He sat in a house built for a family that could not quite exist, eating leftovers, one man working through 2 men's worth of food in complete silence. The earrings glowed faintly in the dim light over the counter. Not a strain, not a warning, just the permanent, ambient warmth of a bond that would never end. He finished eating. He washed the dishes, Goku's habit, because Vegeta would never have bothered, and dried his hands slowly on a towel. Then he stood at the window and looked out into the dark, and in the black glass his reflection stared back, a single silhouette with 2 small points of light burning at its ears. One man, in a house between 2 homes, belonging to everyone and to no one, carrying 2 souls that would never be separate again. He had saved the world. He had won, and the cost of that victory was only just beginning to reveal its shape. Far from Earth, in a pyramid floating in the void, the god of destruction Beerus stirred from a sleep that had lasted the better part of a decade. His long purple frame unfolded, his ears twitched, and his half-lidded golden eyes cracked open with the irritation of a cat woken too early. At his side stood Whis, his eternally composed angelic attendant, waiting with the patience of a being for whom centuries were an afternoon.
Ah, you're awake, my lord. You slept through rather a lot. I do hope you're hungry, and perhaps in the mood for a small prophecy you've been muttering about for years.
Beerus dragged himself upright, yawning wide enough to show every fang, and the memory surfaced through the fog of sleep. A dream of a warrior, a Super Saiyan god. He looked toward his attendant, scratching his ribs.
Whis, did Frieza ever get around to destroying planet Vegeta? Good. Now, what about the surviving Saiyans? I had a dream about a Super Saiyan god, and I want to know if there's anyone left who can give me a decent fight.
Whis consulted the readings that floated around his staff, and a flicker of dry amusement crossed his features. The universe was quieter than Beerus remembered, and the strongest mortals had gathered on a small blue backwater called Earth. But the scouting reports were strange.
Well, my lord, Frieza is dead, killed by a surviving Saiyan. But the current readings are curious. There is an extraordinary power on Earth, but it reads as a doubled signature in a single body. It appears the two strongest surviving Saiyans have permanently fused.
And so the god of destruction set out for Earth, in no particular hurry, because he was a lazy god and there was cuisine to sample along the way. He stopped for delicacies on distant worlds, complained about texture and temperature, and reduced at least one planet to rubble over a disappointing dessert. Whis followed, mild and unbothered, tolerating his master's every whim. The tone was light, almost breezy, two impossibly powerful beings meandering toward a small planet. But something was coming to Earth that operated on a tier no one there had ever touched, and the world did not yet know its power scale was about to be shattered. On Earth, the day Beerus arrived was, of all things, a birthday party. Bulma had thrown herself a lavish celebration at Capsule Corporation, and the entire cast had gathered, warm and loud and ordinary. Krillin and 18 mingled near the food, Gohan hovered protectively near a pregnant Videl, Piccolo stood rigid in a corner looking deeply uncomfortable in a crowd, and Chi-Chi fretted over the catering. It was a rare afternoon of fragile peace, a family that had survived the end of the world enjoying a quiet moment together. Then the air changed. Vegito, plate in hand, went utterly still as a pressure rolled across the party grounds like a cold front. A power that did not feel strong so much as fundamentally larger, on a scale he had no reference for. His two souls reacted in the same instant and in opposite directions, Goku thrilling at the promise of a fight, Vegeta going rigid with alarm. He set his plate down slowly and turned toward the sky.
Something's not right. Whatever coming's down here.
Beerus descended into the party like an uninvited emperor. Whis set his shoulder, and the temperature of the whole gathering dropped. He introduced himself with idle menace, sampled the food with the air of a critic who could end the world over a bad bite, and let his gaze drift across the terrified guests until it landed on the one being who interested him. He tilted his head, studying the strange double density of Vegito's ki, the way it read as two men wearing one body.
So you're the one. There's something wrong with you, Saiyan. Your power feels like two people crammed into one skin. How very strange. I think I'd like to see what you can do before I decide what to do with this planet.
The peace shattered, as it always does, over something petty. Beerus, sampling a pudding, was denied a second helping when Good Boo greedily devoured the last of it, and the god of destruction's temper flared like a struck match. In an instant, the birthday party became a crisis, the guests scattering as a being who could unmake worlds took offense over dessert. But this time there were no two Saiyans to take turns. There was only Vegito, stepping forward alone to stand between a god and everyone he loved. Vegito fought Beerus, and for the first time in the entire story, he was not the strongest thing in the room. He climbed the ladder of his power, Super Saiyan, then higher still, throwing everything he had built across 2 lifetimes at the purple god. And Beerus swatted it all aside like a man brushing off a fly, bopping Vegito on the head, dodging without effort, treating the strongest mortal alive like a mildly amusing toy.
Okay, that's new. I've been holding back my whole life and you're not even trying. What are you?
But losing did something strange to Vegito. The Goku in him was thrilled beyond words. Finally, an opponent who could not be beaten, a mountain worth climbing, and he pushed harder out of sheer joy. The Vegeta in him was humiliated to the bone, his life's pursuit of power reduced to a joke, and he pushed harder out of refusal to be dismissed. For the first time, both engines drove in the same direction at once. Joy and pride fused into a single furious effort. He was losing, and he had never been more alive. But it was not enough, and it was never going to be. Not without something more than mortal. The answer came from Earth's own dragon, hastily summoned by Bulma to dredge up the forgotten legend of the Super Saiyan God. And the ritual to create it required 6 righteous Saiyans, 5 to pour their light into a 6th. But there were not 6 Saiyans anymore. There was Gohan, Goten, Kid Trunks, and Videl carrying the unborn Pan. 4 bodies, 5 souls counting the child. And there was Vegito, 1 body. In the old world, Goku would have been the recipient and Vegeta a separate donor. Now those 2 men lived in one skin, and the math of the ancient rites simply did not fit the shape of what Vegito had become.
The ritual demands 6. You have 5 willing Saiyans in 4 bodies, and 1 warrior who is somehow 2. Interesting. Then let the two who share that body each take a role. One soul must give, the other must receive.
And so the ritual bent itself around the impossible. The four Saiyans arrayed themselves around Vegito and poured their golden light into him, and inside him, the soul of Goku turned itself into the fifth donor, while the soul of Vegeta became the recipient. 5 streams of energy flowing into one waiting vessel. For this to work, the two souls that had blended seamlessly for years had to pull apart, had to remember how to be separate, one giving, one taking, differentiated for the first time since the day they became one. And it hurt. The moment the souls tried to act as two instead of one, Vegito gasped and dropped to a knee, and the earrings did not hum, they flared, a bright startled burst of light and a spike of heat that seized his skull. The four Saiyans felt it too, a resistance shuddering back through the energy link, a friction, as though the fusion itself were fighting the attempt to divide it even slightly. The body resisted, the bond resisted, the very act of being two instead of one tore at the vessel that had made them permanent.
Keep going! Whatever this is, don't stop! Just keep pouring it in! I can hold it! I have to hold it!
Around him, the family held on through their fear. Gohan channeled his energy with steady focus, the most experienced hand among them. Goten gripped his father's hand and watched him gasp in pain and did not understand, his small face crumpling with worry. And it was only Gohan's steady voice telling him it was okay that kept the boy pouring. Kid Trunks set his jaw and hid his fear the way his father once did. Videl held firm for Pan's sake as much as anyone's. And at the edge, unable to help, Bulma and Chi-Chi stood side by side, watching the man they shared writhe in pain, and for once the friction between them vanished entirely. Two frightened women, united by the same helplessness. The light reached its peak and detonated inward, and when it faded, Vegito stood transformed. His hair burned a deep crimson red, his aura shed divine flame, and the raw pressure of his ki had crossed into a realm no mortal was meant to touch. He was a Super Saiyan god now, and the power sang through him like nothing he had ever known. But the ascension carried the echo of that pain, and the earrings stayed warm, a lesson planted deep beneath the triumph. Forcing the two souls to act as two, even for an instant, even for a miracle, cost the body something. The seed was set. The Super Saiyan god turned to face Beerus, and this time it was a real fight. Not equal, the god still held the upper hand and held himself back besides, but for the first time Vegito could make Beerus take him seriously. They clashed across the sky and the sea, trading blows that split clouds and raised walls of ocean water. A mortal dancing with a god of destruction for the first time in eons. And Vegito's cockiness came flooding back, but changed. Against Boo it had been contempt. Against Beerus, it was pure, radiant joy.
There it is! Now we're talking! You have no idea how long I've waited for someone I couldn't just walk over. Come on, don't hold back on me now. This is the most fun I've had since I was born.
Beneath the glory, the clock ticked. The divine ki poured through the mortal vessel, and the earrings answered with a sustained, constant heat, not the sharp flash of the ritual, not the ambient hum of ordinary days, but a steady warmth that never let up. Vegito felt it the entire fight, a low burn behind both ears, and once, mid-exchange, his hand rose to touch his earring in an almost unconscious gesture before he shook it off and threw himself back into the battle. The god power was magnificent, and it was cooking him, slowly, from the ears inward. In the end, Beerus won, because even holding back, he was simply above Vegito. But he was impressed, genuinely, in a way that had not happened in longer than he could remember. This strange two-souled mortal had pushed him further than he had expected, and a god who was bored with existence found himself, of all things, interested. So he made his decision, and it was not mercy, it was appetite.
I've decided I'm not destroying this planet. The food is too good, and you Saiyan are too interesting to erase. Consider yourself lucky, and consider yourself mine to keep an eye on.
Beerus fixed Vegito with that predatory stare and delivered not a request but a decree, the way a god informs a mortal that their life has just changed. He wanted to see what this warrior could become when he was not merely defending a planet, and gods do not ask.
You'll come train with us. I want to see what you've really got. This isn't an invitation, Saiyan. It's the most generous thing I've ever offered anyone, so don't waste it.
Vegito did not refuse. You do not refuse Beerus. And besides, the Goku in him was already thrilled at the thought of training with a god, and the Vegeta in him was already grimly promising himself he would one day surpass this being. The synthesis simply nodded. But before the decree was fully settled, In a quiet moment while Vegito recovered his breath, Whis drifted to his master's side. The angel had watched the entire fight, seeing not just the clashes of power, but the terrifying heat radiating from the Potara earrings.
You pushed him quite hard, my lord. Harder than you needed to, I think. The mortal vessel is already bearing an impossible load. A fraction further, and you might have cracked it.
Beerus stood with his arms behind his back, his golden eyes fixed on the fused warrior in the distance. When he spoke, he did not offer an apology, but a justification delivered with the cold, pragmatic weight of a god who had found something worth keeping.
If he's going to be my champion, he needs to understand exactly where his ceiling is. Better he learns the absolute edge of his limits against me, than shatters himself fighting something that actually wants him dead.
Whis did not press the matter further, because he did not need to. He simply smiled, a mild, knowing expression. A careless god would have broken the vessel without a second thought. But Beerus was testing the glass, purely to see how much fire it could hold before it shattered. And so Vegito traveled to Beerus's world to train under Whis, and there something happened that changed how he understood himself. Whis, an angel who perceived the structure of souls the way a mortal perceived color, watched Vegito move through his first exercises and saw immediately what no one else ever had. He paused, tilted his head, and spoke with the mild curiosity of a man noticing an interesting flower.
How fascinating. The Potara bond is supposed to be absolute, a perfect blending of two into one. But watching your energy flow, the souls haven't truly surrendered to each other, have they? They are braided together, yes, but they still pull against one another, like two currents fighting inside the same river.
Vegito went very still. No one had ever said it aloud. He had felt it every day, that quiet negotiation between two men sharing every breath. But to hear it named by an outside observer made it suddenly, undeniably real. It was relief and exposure in the same instant, the comfort of finally being seen, and the vulnerability of being seen too clearly. He did not confirm it. He did not deny it. He simply set his jaw and threw himself into the training harder than before, as if he could outrun the observation. The training under Whis was, as it always was, a parade of absurd and humbling exercises, dressed as combat, heavy-weighted suits, wax from Whis' staff, menial chores reframed as discipline. The Goku and Vegito took it all in stride, cheerful and tireless, unbothered by looking foolish. The Vegeta in him despised every second of being humbled by a superior. The result was a warrior who complained constantly, half in genuine irritation and half in something like affection, trading dry barbs with an angel who found him endlessly amusing. Through this training, Vegito learned to hold the god power inside the Super Saiyan form, and the blue fire of Super Saiyan Blue was born, his hair blazing cyan, his aura calm and controlled and crackling with divine energy. It was more powerful than the red form and less stable, the Super Saiyan transformation pumping raw god ki through a mortal body, and the earrings hated it. Every time Vegito went blue, they did not merely warm, they heated, a sustained burn that climbed the longer he held the form. Whis noticed, of course. Whis noticed everything.
Your earrings don't much care for the divine energy, do they? I'd be careful with that if I were you. The fusion is permanent, yes, but the vessel that holds it is not limitless. Even permanent things have a ceiling on how much they can bear.
It was the first time anyone had framed the strain as a real danger rather than a curiosity. And Whis, the most trustworthy voice in the story, because he had no agenda at all, had just quietly named the shape of the threat. Vegito did not find the exact ceiling in training, but he learned its outline, how long he could hold blue before the burn turned to something worse, how much output triggered the sharp warning sparks. He stopped ignoring the clock. He began to manage it. He was not reckless with the fusion. He was careful, and that care was a mercy he would spend later, when the stakes stripped it away. On one of his trips home during the training period, Vegito worked with the boys in the border house yard, and the strain and the fear behind it surfaced for the first time in a place that should have been safe. He was sparring lightly with Goten and Kid Trunks, ordinary and warm, and to show them what the new form looked like, he flared to Super Saiyan Blue for just a moment. The earrings sparked, sharp and hot, and he dropped to one knee with a grunt. The boys froze, and Goten ran to him, frightened.
Dad! Dad! What's wrong? Are you okay? Your ears! Why did they? Dad?
Vegito waved it off and climbed back to his feet. But something in him had changed. The next round was different, harder, faster. He pushed the boys in a way he never had. Not cruel, but suddenly serious, demanding, relentless. When Goten gasped for a break, Vegito refused it. When Kid Trunks tried to laugh his way out with a joke, the way he always did, Vegito shut it down, and the words came out wrong, too sharp, too cold. Vegeta's voice with none of Goku's warmth to soften it.
Stop fooling around! Both of you! Man up!
The temperature in the yard dropped. Goten stared at his father, who had never spoken to him in that tone, and did not understand. Kid Trunks went quiet, recognizing the hard edge of a father's harshness and finding, for once, that his shield of humor did not work against it. What the boys could not know was what had flashed through Vegito in the instant the earrings sparked. For 1 second, he had felt what it might be like if the fusion failed mid-battle, if the vessel simply gave out, and the thought that followed had been a cold terror with nowhere to go. If I am gone, who protects them? Who protects Earth, the families, these two boys? He could not say any of that to children. So the fear came out sideways, disguised as harshness, because it had no other door. He crossed the yard, and instead of an apology he could not find the words for, he reached out. He ruffled Goten's hair with a heavy, familiar warmth, and then let his hand rest firmly on Trunks' shoulder. A quiet, grounding weight. It was the only peace offering he knew how to give.
Come on! Let's head inside! Dinner's almost ready!
No explanation, no apology. Just a reassuring touch and an invitation to eat. A sudden rush of warmth flooding back to cover the cold edge that had frightened them. The boys followed, because that was what they knew how to do. But the moment lingered in all three of them. A small fracture that would not fully heal. A warning none of them had the words for yet. Meanwhile, in the quiet stretch before the next storm, Bulma's long war against the fusion hit its first true wall. She had studied it for over a year now, mapped Vegito's ki, scanned the earrings, analyzed his cells down to their smallest structure, and she had found nothing, because there was nothing to find. The fusion had no seam. There was no boundary between the Goku part and the Vegeta part to pry open, no mechanism to reverse, because it was not two things joined together. It was one thing that had once been two, and the difference was absolute. She sat alone in her lab staring at scan results that showed her only smoothness where she needed a crack, and her face moved through frustration and grief, and settled, as it always did, on stubborn resolve. She would build a better scanner. She would try again. She always tried again. But something had shifted, and it hardened when Chi-Chi came to the border house with groceries and found her working, and asked the careful question.
Any progress? No. There's nothing to work with. There's no seam, no door, no mechanism. It's just permanent. All the way down.
Chi-Chi nodded, unsurprised, and then said something that stopped Bulma cold, something that cost her to say. It was the core difference between the two women laid bare for the first time, spoken plainly across a kitchen counter.
Then maybe stop. Every time you come back with nothing, it makes it worse. For me. Because every time you try, I let myself hope again, and then it fails, and I have to lose him all over again. I can't keep losing him, Bulma. I'd rather just live with what's left of him than keep burying him.
Bulma stared at her, and neither woman was wrong. Bulma fought because fighting was how she loved, because stopping would mean accepting Vegeta was gone. Chi-Chi wanted her to stop because the hope was the thing that kept the wound open. Two griefs, opposite in every direction, both valid, both unbearable. Bulma did not stop, but after that day she went quiet about it, stopped sharing her failures, and carried them alone. And that was its own small tragedy, because the research that might have brought the two women together now pushed them apart, each grieving in a language the other could not speak. But the quiet could not last, because far away, a dead tyrant was clawing his way back to life. The remnants of the Frieza force, led by the loyal Sorbet, gathered Earth's own Dragon Balls and wished their emperor back from hell, reassembling him piece by piece into his full restored body. Frieza returned alive, whole, and consumed with a hatred that had festered in the underworld for years. A narcissist rage sharpened to a razor by humiliation and death. And then Sorbet delivered the report that transformed Frieza's fury into something colder and stranger. The Frieza Force scouts had watched Earth for years, and the single greatest change in the planet's defenses was this. The two Saiyans who had killed him, Kakarot and the traitor prince, were gone. They had permanently fused into one warrior called Vegito. They were no longer two men, they were one. Frieza received this news in silence, and when he finally spoke, his voice was ice.
They fused, permanently. Of course they did. Of course the universe would find a way to insult me even more thoroughly than before. My two greatest enemies didn't even have the decency to stay two. I cannot even kill them separately now.
A lesser villain would have raged blindly into the fight. Frieza was many things, but he was not stupid. He knew he faced something stronger than either Saiyan had been alone, and so he trained, harder and longer than he ever had in his cursed life. 4 months of dedicated, focused agony, honing a new transformation, the blazing golden Frieza. In the world you remember, that form had a fatal flaw, a stamina drain born of impatience. Frieza trained to burn that flaw away, and he reduced it, though 4 months could not fully erase a weakness that had taken his enemies years of divine effort to overcome. The weakness shrank. It did not vanish. And Sorbet's intelligence carried one more prize, a rumor the scouts had gathered watching Vegito train in his own yard. They had seen the earrings react to great outpourings of power, seen them flash. Frieza filed it away, cold and patient, and built his entire strategy around it. He would not try to overpower Vegito, because he could not. He would try to outlast him. He would force the fused warrior to sustain his god power, burn the stability of the fusion itself, and win not by killing his enemy, but by making his enemy come apart. It was the plan of a genuinely dangerous mind. Frieza came to Earth with an army at his back, and the sky over the planet went dark with his ships. The alarm reached Vegito, and the whole cast rallied. Gohan, Piccolo, Krillin, Tien, Master Roshi, arraying themselves to hold off the swarming soldiers, while the main event unfolded above. The supporting fighters carving through the grunts, the true clash reserved for the sky. And Vegito rose to meet the tyrant alone. The two enemies met in the air, and the first exchange was words. Frieza, seeing the fused warrior for the first time, was all cold poison, his hatred controlled and precise.
So, the two monkeys became one. How quaint. I suppose I should be flattered that it took the both of you combined to feel safe from me.
Vegito answered in his cocky register, amused on the surface, but beneath it, the Vegeta in him simmered with a hatred all its own. The memory of a race enslaved and a planet destroyed.
Frieza, nice look. The gold thing suits you. You've been working out down in hell? Because you're gonna need it, and it still won't be enough.
The battle erupted, and Golden Frieza was no joke. 4 months of brutal training had made him genuinely dangerous, his power crashing into the tier of Super Saiyan Blue, and Vegeta was forced to go blue to match him. The instant he did, the earrings heated, the strain clock waking with the divine energy, and Frieza saw it. He saw Vegito's hand twitch toward his ear, saw the flicker of a wince, and a cold and terrible smile spread across the tyrant's face. The rumor was true. The fusion had a breaking point, and Frieza had just watched his enemy confirm it. So Frieza changed his fight. He stopped trying to overpower Vegito and started to run the clock, dodging, evading, stalling, throwing just enough attacks to force Vegito to hold Super Saiyan Blue and keep the divine energy pouring through the straining vessel. Every second Vegito stayed blue, the earrings climbed hotter. Frieza was patient, a tyrant who had waited years in hell for this, and he was content to wait a little longer while his enemy slowly cooked himself alive.
What's the matter, Saiyan? Feeling the heat? I know your little secret. Every moment you burn that pretty blue fire, you come a little more undone. So by all means, keep it lit.
But Frieza had his own clock, and Vegito, fighting with Vegeta's tactical mind and Goku's battle instinct fused into one sharp awareness, saw it. Golden Frieza's movements were slowing, just barely, his power dipping, his golden aura flickering at the edges. The stamina flaw, reduced but not gone, was bleeding him dry. And Vegito realized the shape of the true contest. It was a race between two failing clocks, his straining earrings against Frieza's draining stamina, and the tyrant was running out faster than he was. Vegito committed. He would not let Frieza stall him into oblivion, would not wait to discover what happened if the earrings hit their ceiling, so he ended it. He gathered the fused torrent of Vegeta's final flash and Goku's Kamehameha, charged it with searing God Ki, and unleashed the final Kamehameha, the same technique that had ended Kid Buu, now burning with divine fire. It caught Golden Frieza full on and the gleaming form cracked and shattered, the tyrant devastated in a single overwhelming blast. But Frieza, dying and defeated, did the thing spite always does. He turned his hatred on the planet itself and hurled a blast to shatter the Earth's core, the same monstrous act that in another life had required an angel to rewind time. Here there was no need for a miracle. Vegito was faster than Goku alone, right there, and he moved the instant Frieza did. He vanished with instant transmission, closed the distance in a heartbeat, and obliterated Frieza point blank before the world-killing blast could fully form. The tyrant died, the Earth was saved, and no god had to turn back time to do it. The cost came due the moment the battle ended. That final desperate burst had demanded a massive surge of Super Saiyan Blue, and the earrings screamed. Not a hum, not a heat, but a visible flare of light from both at once, and Vegito staggered as the fight died away, clutching his ears, his knees buckling. It passed. He did not fall, he was not diffused, but something in the earrings had changed, and when the pain receded, they were warmer than before, even at rest. The baseline had shifted. The clock had ticked forward, and this time, it did not tick back.
That one didn't go back down all the way. It's still warm. It's just going to stay warm now, isn't it?
In the aftermath, the new heat became his constant companion, a low burn behind both ears that never fully faded, and he told no one, because Goku's instinct whispered it's fine, and Vegeta's pride refused to show weakness. But the boys had been there for the fight, had helped hold the line against the soldiers, and they had seen him stagger, seen him clutch his ears. They remembered the day in the yard. They were putting it together, wordlessly, each in his own way, that something was wrong with their father's fusion, and that it got worse when he fought hard. Bulma had watched the fight from the city, and she recognized what she saw, because she had been tracking it in her scans for over a year. She began asking Vegito pointed questions when he came home, and he deflected, and she did not push, but that night, she made a new entry in her research log. Strain event during Frieza fight. Earrings flared. Post-fight baseline increased. This is accumulating. It was the first time she had documented the strain as a thing that built rather than passed, and though she did not yet know what it meant, she was now the only person alive who was tracking the shape of it. Chi-Chi, for her part, did not ask about the earrings at all. She asked if he was hurt, knew he was lying when he said no, and fed him anyway. That was her way. Piccolo, who missed nothing, cornered Vegito privately after the battle, blunt as a hammer.
The earrings. Something's wrong with them. The boys saw it. They're scared, and they're going to start asking you questions you don't want to answer. So figure out what you're going to tell them, because I'm not going to do it for you.
And Vegito, respecting the honesty, made a choice. He would tell the boys a partial truth, enough to explain his caution without enough to terrify them. He gathered Goten and Kid Trunks and gave them the shape of it without the weight.
When I use my strongest power, the fusion gets strained. It's not breaking, but it's working hard, and I have to be careful with it. That's all.
Goten accepted it instantly, because his father said it was fine, and that was enough for a boy his age. But Kid Trunks, sharper, asked the question that mattered.
What happens if it breaks?
Vegito paused, and then he did not answer the question. He made a promise instead.
It won't. I won't let it.
Kid Trunks heard the deflection. But he also heard the promise, and he chose to believe it, for now. And now the last thread of the divine era was spun, the one that would unravel everything to come. Beerus, immensely pleased with his mortal champion, decided to take a petty victory lap across the multiverse. He did not single out Universe 10, it was simply the next stop on a tour designed to annoy every other god in existence. When they arrived in the tranquil courtyards of the 10th universe, Whis politely presented the gentle supreme Kai Gowasu with a box of Earth's finest sweet rice cakes, a gesture of proper divine etiquette. Gowasu hosted them with quiet appreciation, enduring the destroyer's subsequent bragging with patience, his apprentice Zamasu standing silently at his side. Beerus sat to drink tea and loudly exaggerate his mortal's power. But the Goku and Vegito, ever curious about divine strength, politely asked the young Kai for a friendly match. Zamasu accepted, hiding his quiet disdain for mortals beneath a polite bow. But the moment the spar began, the friendly Goku vanished, and the Vegeta half of the fusion took the wheel. Vegito didn't just defeat the apprentice, he dismantled him with the ruthless, mocking pride of the Saiyan prince. He batted away divine strikes with a single finger, his smirk radiating absolute contempt for the trainee's frailty.
Is this a joke? You call yourself divine, but you fight like a pampered amateur. I've got 2 lifetimes of combat in my blood, and you're not worth the effort of either of them. If this is what passes for a god in Universe 10, I'm embarrassed I even warmed up.
The beating only ended when Gowasu, sensing the sheer cruelty of the mismatch, gently stepped forward and declared the spar over. Zamasu, a proud god in training, had been made to look like a helpless child, humiliated in front of his own master and a visiting god of destruction. He said nothing. He bowed politely. But behind his gray eyes, the true first cause of everything that was coming snapped into place. The god's soul sickened with envy, and a burning, obsessive hatred for that specific, arrogant Saiyan voice took root. This was the true first cause of everything that was coming. Zamasu's soul was already sick with a hidden envy, a conviction that mortals were a mistake, climbing toward a godhood they did not deserve. And Vegito, of course, noticed none of it. He had won, he had enjoyed himself, and he moved on, oblivious that he had just broken something fundamental in a god's apprentice.
A remarkably productive afternoon, my lord. Traveling across the multiverse simply to boast over tea, and leaving a young apprentice's pride in pieces on the floor. I am sure the cosmic balance is much safer for it.
Beerus picked his teeth with a pinky nail, thoroughly unbothered as they turned to leave the serene courtyard behind. A god of destruction did not look back at the messes he made.
Oh, stop fussing, Whis. I didn't tell him to fight the boy. But if my idiot brother decides to show his fat face in our universe anytime soon, it doesn't hurt to let the rest of the multiverse know exactly who holds the strongest mortal. Besides, the tea here was dreadfully bitter. Let's go home.
Time passed, and the new normal absorbed the divine era. Vegito trained under Whis part of the time and came home to the border house the rest. Stronger than he had ever been, Super Saiyan Blue mastered, divine tier, but more aware of his own limits than ever. He was careful now, using blue sparingly, having felt the edge of the ceiling and wanting never to find it by accident. He was becoming, more and more, simply Vegito, a person in his own right with his own humor and his own way of loving, the grief no longer at the forefront, but a life being built on top of it. The family had settled into its shapes. Bulma's research had split into two threads now, the impossible one, undoing the fusion, and the urgent one, understanding the strain that she alone was tracking. Chi-Chi and Bulma had reached a wary truce, two women sharing an impossible life and finding a way to do it without wounding each other further. Goten was growing, watching, learning what his father carried without fully grasping it. And Trunks carried his father's promise like a stone in his pocket, watching more closely than any child should have to, worried in a way he could not put into words. On one evening, the border house was warm and full. Goten and Kid Trunks sprawled in the living room playing a video game, their laughter filling the house, and Vegito stood in the kitchen doorway watching them and eating. Not grieving anymore, not exactly, but settled, a life built on top of an impossible thing. And then Kid Trunks paused the game and looked at him through the doorway and asked, casually, the question a sharp boy asks when he has been thinking too long.
Hey, Dad, when you were fighting the gold guy, Frieza, did it hurt? The earrings?
Both boys looked at him, waiting, and Vegito made his choice in the space of a breath. He grinned, the one that said everything was fine, and he lied to his children to keep them from being afraid.
Nah, I'm way tougher than a couple of earrings, kid. Now stop worrying about your old man and go back to losing that game.
The boys relaxed. Goten laughed and turned back to the screen. Kid Trunks held the look for one more second, then let it go and turned back too. But the grin held only until they stopped watching. Then it faded, and Vegito raised a hand and touched his ear. And it was warm, the way it was always warm now. The baseline that had climbed after Frieza and would never climb back down. A man lying to his sons to keep their world intact, in a house that had become a home, carrying a clock that ticked louder than he would admit. And far away, in the quiet halls of Universe 10, over a pot of gently steaming tea, a god's apprentice was beginning to dream of a world washed clean of mortals. Something was coming that no one on Earth could see yet. But that is a story for the tournament and the darkness that comes next.